You're listening to the Survivor Sweat Podcast with Mike Buchmiller and Russell Rosenblum. If you're looking for strategy articles and just about everything Survivor, head to survivorsweat.com. Now, let's get to it.
All right. Welcome to Survivor Sweat Pod 14. Crying out loud. We were last year's Jed entry. And as you know, Jed is dead if you've been watching the pod. And now for the fourth straight week, the Chalkers are dead as well. Man, this pool just keeps getting chopped down in record pace.
We're ahead of our time.
We were ahead of our time. It's tough to sit there and watch these games and just say, what if? What if we had made it to that week 9, which looks to be the magical week this year. The Chalk kind of held steady and true up to week 9 or through week 9. And then for 4 straight weeks, the pool has just been absolutely carnage. So my name is Mike Buchmiller. My partner in crime, Russell Rosenblum. And we are looking at last week's carnage. I know several entries had multiple entering, and one entered with 3 entries, and he had 2 on the Jags and 1 on Pitt, so he's now lost. The good news, L.A. Joneser, remember L.A. Joneser?
I do.
The ultimate misclick here.
I do.
He
the
took
man of destiny, the man of fate.
He took the Bucks and he survived. So
yes, he did.
He is still in there. And unfortunately, there will be no repeat this year. The defending co-champ, Alex Brown, who was on the pod a few weeks back, for those of you who've seen that, he took the Pittsburgh Steelers and got clipped. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough spot. It's just, as we said, it's not as if we didn't think Pittsburgh could win the game. I know I feel like a broken record week in, week out. They may win, they may lose, but you don't want to be in a spot where if they lose, you're out, obviously. And if they win, you make up almost no ground. Again, you've got 100% of your entries at that point are on Pittsburgh, and you've got, 30% of the fields on Pittsburgh. It's just not, there's no value.
No,
there's just no value. I mean, that's the end of the day. There's just not a lot of value there. So I feel bad for Alex. We're friendly with Alex, but it's not the pick and we told him this. It's not the pick we would have taken. We didn't have to tell him this. He said he saw the pod and he knew we would have taken a different pick. He decided to go with Pittsburgh. We actually watched the game with him, which was brutal for those that did watch the Pittsburgh game, because they got weather delayed multiple times, and you didn't even get to see the game. It
was the absolute ultimate slow roll.
Yep.
I mean, you just want it quick and painless. And watching Pittsburgh's offense is painful enough, and here they're coming off a week where they fired their offensive coordinator and they put up 400 points. You think they're in a good spot at home versus Arizona. I mean, that's why 30 people.
Well, again, you've got Kyler back. This is not the same Arizona you got in week 1, 2, 3, right? Where everybody's trying to fade Arizona. I'm not saying I think Arizona is, great, but as we've talked about week in, week out, there are probably 8 credible teams in the NFL. Pittsburgh's not one of those 8.
No.
And certainly Arizona is not one of those 8. And you got a couple of marginal teams in Pittsburgh and Arizona, are neither of those either. Now, of course, you're going to have to take some marginal spots down the line, but taking Pittsburgh over Arizona is not simply, you're clicking it to next week.
No. And then, there's going to be a high percentage of entries on them, and you're just not going to gain that much equity when they get through. And so here they are, just 2 weather delays, ultimate slow roll. And as you mentioned, we happen to be watching the game with Alex. And for those of you out there, Alex took it like a champ. He was very, how would I say, he knows the odds on winning this thing back to back is ridiculous, much less once.
Yeah. Even when there were 50 people left, it's very low. Yeah.
And to come into this week with, 80 left or whatever it was at the time, man, what a sick run, and congratulations to him. And like I said, he took it like a champ, and he'll be back for sure. We'll all be back, but
No doubt.
Always next year for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, looking on Survivor,
he took it better than I did when we got. It's funny, we got our last entry knocked out with Arizona too, and he took it better than I did. We had the Rams, and I think I was in a restaurant. I'm amazed he didn't throw me out. I was practically throwing stuff.
Yeah, no, it was rough for sure. It was rough for sure. It seems like a long time ago, but man, it cut deep for sure. Just looking on Survivor Atlas leaderboard, just try to figure out who took what and break those down. And then I notice now there's nobody with multiple picks. Just a few weeks ago, there were people with 10, 8, 7, 6, and now you got a fair fight. You got 30 out there.
Yep.
Each having one pick. I mean, that we know of. Maybe somebody has a different screen name and has multiple.
Right.
I have no idea, but to our knowledge, everybody has.
You can tell quickly. A lot of them had multiple picks to start. As a matter of fact.
Oh yeah.
Even when I'm looking at the Circa page, I'm looking down the list, and this, of course, doesn't 100% mean they had multiple picks to start, but very likely, almost everybody's team name ends in a number.
Yeah.
Like Amy Which Way 2, Bago picks 1. Now it's possible the people that end in 1 only had 1, but I don't think so. Usually you end in a number, it's because you had multiple picks. And I literally think every single one of them had multiple picks at one time.
So. And I mean,
I don't see any that don't end in a number.
Before, if you're going to be in this contest, I believe you have to max out.
Yeah, I do. We do it with partners. You don't have to do it yourself.
Sure.
Go find a group of people that want to max out with you.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%. All right. Let me do a little quick recap.
Yeah, recap for me.
3. So 50 hit the skids this week. 62.5% of the pool went down. There are 30 of the original 9,267 entries. Crazy. Yep. 99.67% of the entire pool has been eliminated through week 13. And I'm happy to report there was no picks this week. Yes. Perfect.
Progress.
Yes, of course. Progress. Last year through week 13, 1.2% of the pool remained, 71 entries. So they are ahead of the pace, quickly leapfrogging last year's percentages.
Significantly ahead. There were 71 left last year out of 6,000 and change. This year there's 30 left out of 9,000 and change. Significantly ahead.
And I've heard this several times, and we've mentioned this, but for the first 9 weeks, this was kind of the chalkiest pool that I've ever been part of. And so for the favorites to go down, I can see exactly why, or the process of why this pool has been clipped in a hurry.
And I also think as you make it further and further along in this thing, week 1, you have a lot of choices. Whether it's the chalk, second chalk, third chalk, whatever, eighth chalk, whatever you're taking. By the time you reach here, I mean, you did have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. You had 9 different teams taken, sort of. But again, if you discount the ones that only have 1 entry on them, you really only had 5 teams taken. Week 1, I think we could have had it. I don't remember 18 teams taken. We had underdogs taken. So you're also more limited in how many teams are realistically eligible now. Nobody really has, or very few people, if any, have teams like Kansas City, Miami, Dallas. Like they're long gone.
Yeah.
Maybe Kansas City is available if they're saving them for, was it Christmas? Only 7 people have Kansas City left. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, there are not a lot of people. I mean, everybody's got Carolina left.
Yeah. Well, to your point, so the Bucks and the Rams were not taken heavily, 15-5 accordingly, but everybody had them. Yep. So they went with the Steelers and the Jags. So back to the chalk, I mean, they may have thought about taking the Bucks.
They did. A lot of people did. We've had a number of people reach out to us and say, look, I understand. I totally get it with avoid the chalk. And, I agree with you and I'm going to do it. And then it becomes not this week. As we've talked about, a lot of the strategy, it's easy to discuss. It's easy to say. It's hard to push the button.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And to your point, Alex, he said, I listened to your whole pod last week. I thought about the Rams. Yep. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
He said he thought about the Bucks, just couldn't do it. I think he said his second option was going to be the Houston Texans.
It was. He was really hoping they would lose. At that point, since he didn't take them, you don't want to think there's something you could have done to make a difference, right? And I get that. I'd be exactly not criticizing for that. I'd be the same way. It's the team we didn't take. You just don't. You don't want that to be the one that would have gotten through.
Yeah, there was a few guys that I was connecting with on Twitter, and they were just sick to their stomachs because they had taken Pittsburgh and they really wanted to take Jacksonville, but they thought there would be more on Jacksonville and vice versa.
Sure.
And now
whatever.
Jacksonville lost, so now they're
whatever.
They're free and clear in their mind.
And this is the thing, even though, as you know, it's pretty clear that we're a little bit on the bitter side that we're knocked out, not too much. But it's annoying. Like anybody, it's annoying.
Yeah.
But the strategy we took, again, it's held firm because it doesn't matter. I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter if you get knocked out in week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or week 17 if there's still somebody left, right? So at the end of the day, the strategy we used was sound. And if this stuff happens a little bit earlier, we're just in a great spot. It happened to happen a little bit later. People were still taking the chalk. So, it's all we can really ask for, other than trying to win a game or two earlier. Now, the people that lost this week could say they finally took that bad beat. But again, let's say they didn't. Okay, well, then instead of 30 people left, there's still 50. Right. Like they would not have actually moved forward, right? If for us, we would have always moved forward. Speaking of which, about last week, we do put ourselves in the line a little bit now that we don't actually have our entry anymore. And so we give who we would have taken, and we try to be realistic. We try not to say, okay, we're taking, whatever. The Chiefs, not a good example this week, but, pick one: Miami, Chiefs, Cowboys, Eagles, 49ers. Like, we're not sitting there every week going, take the 49ers. We all know you got them burned. And I think we gave 2 suggestions out, right? 2 realistic suggestions. Teams that between them, it's very unlikely you have them both burned. You probably don't even have one burned, but almost nobody would have 2 burned. And I think I said, Mike, you and I, if we were still in, off the cuff, I had a pick. You had a slightly different pick off the cuff. You said we need to run numbers on them. I noted we'd probably get a little bit of an argument. You'd probably be able to persuade me to your side, assuming that's the side you stayed on. Didn't matter. I think both of our theoretical picks got through. I did say to you as we were watching the game, you were probably right in that mine got through with much more of a sweat than yours would have gotten through it. However, as I contemplated it, I haven't looked specifically. Yours is far more likely to have some future value, even though I haven't looked. Mine would be at a 0 to have future value. The my off the cuff was the Chargers. Yeah. Without doing, any additional research, just based on popularity and probability of winning. And I think, Mike, you like the Rams. Is that right?
Yeah, of course. And so if you listened to the pod last week and we went through our process, you almost could tell that we were talking it through right then and there. And we came to a kind of a conclusion of where we would start and that where we would do our work on each specific team. And to your point, each week on Survivor Sweat X handle, we pop it out before we know where everybody is at in terms of percentages. And our exact tweet was that we believe that 3 teams would command heavy concentration of the picks: Jacks, Bucks, and Steelers. And if you
shocking,
and if you were one of the 80 lucky entries and somehow had the Dolphins or Cowboys, you were in great position versus the field, and that we would most likely land on the Chargers and the Rams in that spot due to the low ownership.
Now, in fairness, I wouldn't have taken them anyway because of Christmas and other implications. But I think we did note that if you had Kansas City, it's not, a terrible spot as long as you have another Christmas pick, although they lost. It's not the one I would take, but I would not have really begrudged somebody for taking the Chiefs if they had another play down the line. Only
if they had Philly in their back pocket.
Correct. And by the way, to be clear, I'd rather hold the Chiefs because the whole world is holding Philly. You're back to the same thing. Now you're going to have, you avoid the chalk today so you can have the chalk on Christmas, right? And on Christmas, it's interesting because, there are sometimes if you have the chalk, you don't have a lot of choices. That's one of the rare occasions, Christmas and Thanksgiving, even more so Christmas, one fewer game, that you may have no choice but to, I'm not going to suggest go take the underdog, although there are times when that actually might be the case, even when you have the favorite available, but they're not likely, but they're possible. And as we look now, even after coming out of this week, 23 have Philly, 7 have Kansas City of the remaining. I didn't do a comparison to see if some have both, or it's literally of the 30, because 23 plus 7 is 30. If some have both, that means some have none. My quick guess is that nobody has both. I'm hoping everybody's got someone for Thanksgiving. It probably published an atlas. But at this point, obviously, I'd rather have the one that have 7 entries, not the one that has 23. And for those that say, well, Philly can't lose. Come on, again, we're going to say this. Anybody can win in the NFL. This is not, it's not Alabama playing some Division II school where I'd bet the house, but here it's anybody can win in the NFL. If you don't believe it, just look at last night's Monday night's game.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at this game and I don't know what, by the way, just to be clear, if they don't lose Trevor Lawrence, everybody's whining, oh, well, they lost Trevor Lawrence. And it's still not clear they're winning that game.
No.
I mean, they're more likely, but it's still not clear they're winning that game there.
Yeah.
Beathard actually, I'm not going to say he looked great, but I mean, he had a couple of passes, moved him down the field a little bit. It's the defense was atrocious. I mean, Browning looked better than everybody thought, but I don't suddenly magically think Browning is the next coming of Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he hasn't shown that yet. It's just the Jacksonville defense. I don't know if they looked ahead. I have no idea what was going on, but it just looked bad.
Yeah, it did look bad. And Jacksonville's one of those third-tier teams that we've discussed that look really good some weeks, and other weeks you're just like, wow. I mean, if they won last week, they're in line. They would hold the number one seed at the time.
And that's a joke here. And we've talked about this too in the NFL week in, week out. And we've actually run some numbers on it. And I don't have them in front of me, but it's pretty laughable. When we say tier 3, you're like, wow, tier 3, like who's in your tier 1 and 2? Tier 1 is like, 3 teams. It's like, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Kansas City, probably. And Kansas City might be moving down to tier 2.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure where they are. And then tier 2, you're looking at sort of like Miami and Dallas. And then you've got Baltimore. That's maybe between tiers 1 and 2, depending on the week. It's hard to tell. And then, everybody else, you've got a couple of these, but the tier 3 is also really small. It's sort of like, you've got literally you're looking at Jacksonville and I forget there was some team in the NFC that we probably shoved there.
And by the way,
and then the rest of the league is like tier 9. There is no tier 5, 6. I think they're just awful. And
now everybody's falling in love with the Cowboys again because they look so great, but they haven't beat anybody.
I grew up a lifelong Dolphins fan.
If the Cowboys are going to be great,
they got to win this week.
They got to beat Philly. They got to
win this week
because
it's at home. It's at home too. And to be blunt, we often know, stray from fantasy too much, from Survivor fantasy too much here. We've already bet Philly this week. We've already bet Philly this week. I mean, I actually think Philly, despite what happened last week, as you noted, they had a bad setup going into the week. I mean, I grew up a lifelong Dolphins fan. Right now, I'm more of a Survivor and fantasy fan. So it's where my money is where I'll root. That said, I'm the first to say that's one of the reasons that Miami's tier 2 team. They've beaten every team that's bad, and they've lost every team that's good. Exactly. It's the same as Dallas. So they're the same. So we'll see. But Dallas is going to have to come out and win convincing. If they win by 3, it's like, okay, well, maybe Philly's, banged up or shaken up. If Dallas wins by 20, that'll be compelling.
No, it's incredible. So Dallas just, beats up on these teams. Dak's having a really good year. They go into San Francisco. They get absolutely just manhandled. All of a sudden, McCarthy can't coach again. They're just not built to win. They can't do it. They're not going to get it done. They go on this sick run because they're playing teams that are not credible. And next thing you know, McCarthy's in like possible coach of the year. He's now.
But look at this too. You have everybody saying between Philly and San Francisco, one of them was the best team in the NFL. Okay. Mm-hmm. Suddenly Philly goes in and gets their clock cleaned in San Francisco. And now suddenly they're underdogs against Dallas.
Yeah.
Whatever. There's the same team. San Francisco is a great team. It's going to happen. Things are going to go wrong when you have to play them. It is what it is.
The Niners, and this is more from a sports betting standpoint, the Niners were coming off 10 days rest. Philadelphia had played 3 games in 12 days. Coming off an emotional OT win where their defensive players had 92 snaps. We bet San Francisco.
Yes, we did.
End of story. Do I think that it'll be a different game if they meet again in the playoffs? Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I think Philly can win. I think,
of course, they can win.
I think the Niners can win too, but it's going to be.
Put it this way: despite the last line, if they play in, I don't know what it'd be. If they're in a neutral field, maybe it's San Francisco -2.5 to -3.5. Like it's something like that.
Maybe
if they play in Philly again, it's home field's not 3 anymore.
Yeah,
and it's probably San Francisco -1, -1.5. I think. I mean, it's pretty close to a pick'em game.
Yeah,
if they play in San Francisco, it might be 6.
And health's going to dictate a lot of that.
Of course, I'm saying all else being equal right now.
Which team's going to come in clean, and how that's all going to shake out.
Anyway,
So-
we got to get back to Survivor
Yes,
before we
Survivor.
upset somebody
I
here.
just-
Sorry, people out there. You can just keep hitting the fast forward button.
Yes.
Put something in
So
there for the index.
I want to discuss one entry. A few weeks back, we discussed Be Smarter Than Danito, and that specific entry as maybe being the single best entry in there. Well, I'm sad to report
We're 30 people smarter than Benito.
he took the Jags. So better luck next year, Mr. Danito. He is now dust. But sick run, of course, sick run. But I'm sure I just wanted to go back and discuss it because it was an entry that I had been tracking that I thought had, positive EV versus the field.
And to be clear, there's no shame in going broke. It is what it is. You're going to go busting this thing. Almost everybody is. The reality is, though, and I'm not going to say there's shame in it, it's a big difference going broke when you're taking the team everybody else has, or where you're going broke trying to actually advance.
Yes.
Like trying to make headway in the field. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that I would have taken the Saints or Jets this week.
No.
And not just because they lost. Those were certainly interesting picks to say the least. But maybe they had some reasons. I didn't spend a lot of time studying their entries, and maybe they didn't have the chalk or they didn't want the chalk because they didn't want to be that invested and wait till next week. I mean, who knows? Don't know. Maybe they're just Jets fans. Maybe it's the Jets fan that's out there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Zach Wilson's dad and finally decided to step up.
Oh, gosh.
All right.
All right. Well, that is the recap for week 13. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll tee it up for you on the flip side.
Time for a message from our sponsor. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Survivor Sweat Podcast.
If you live out of state but want to enter any of the biggest football handicapping contests in Las Vegas, you've come to the right place. Football Proxy is the most professional proxy service in Las Vegas and can serve as your trusted proxy to enter your picks each week for the Super Contest, Circa Sports Millions, or Circa Survivor Contests. What makes Football Proxy different from other proxies? Well, like other proxies, we have late selection deadlines and an easy-to-use web portal to submit your picks each week. But, unlike other proxies, we allow our customers to change their picks anytime before the pick deadline, which is crucial when gathering last-minute information. Ask another proxy if they allow you to make changes to your picks and see their reaction. It's what makes us the top-rated proxy service in Las Vegas. To get started, fill out the contact form and a representative will contact you to answer any questions and schedule an appointment. Then book your trip to Las Vegas and meet us at the designated casino to get signed up. Once the season starts, sweat the action all season long with your picks. Schedule an appointment today and compete against the world's best for your chance at millions.
Week 14. Wow, some interesting plays here. First off, if you have the Miami Dolphins, and there's one of you out there, man, you are the top EV play of the week. So you're going to take them either this week or next week versus the Jets. That's when you're going to take them.
Yeah, or you're holding them just so you don't have to look it up. Otherwise, you're like
No,
Dallas, Baltimore, Buffalo. There's just no way.
Yeah, you don't want any part of that. So you're taking them either this week versus Tennessee as a 13-point favorite, or next week at home versus the Jets. Either one is fine, but you're pushing that button and you're using them either this week or next week. You have the 49ers here, 10.5, but we know 4 of them have them, but you got to save them.
I think so.
You're going to save them here at this point. You got the Ravens -7 versus the Rams. Texans -5.5 versus the Jets.
Only 10 people have Baltimore.
Yes. You have the Packers, the resurgent Packers. Jordan Love, everybody loves him now. He's going to be the future. 4 weeks ago, man, they were just going to push the reset button next year. But here he is, made some great progress. Good for him.
And to your point, I'm going to cut you off there for a second.
Yep.
When you look, and you've got 29 of the 30 people have the Packers.
Yeah.
You've got, where are you, Houston? 24 of the 30 have the Texans available, right?
Yep.
And then let me go down to Pittsburgh, which is like the next likely one on the popularity list that I wouldn't be warm and fuzzy about anyway.
Oh, gosh.
14, so roughly half the field has Pittsburgh. So you're going to probably look at your popularity being Green Bay and Houston. Now, I don't know which way that's going to be weighted, but it doesn't really matter much. I'm hoping to avoid them if I'm, still alive in here and I can, like if I've got some other candidates here, like it's interesting. You've got New Orleans and you've got half the field that still has New Orleans. And I suspect they'll be far less popular than those other two teams. Those are the three teams, Green Bay, Houston, Pittsburgh.
Now, Jameson Winston looks like he's going to be under center. So if you're going to have faith in him.
Yeah, but in fairness, New Orleans has been, mediocre. Carolina has been terrible. And I don't think they've been as good as mediocre because of Derek Carr.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know how different they're going to be.
No, exactly. I think, the second best EV play here is the Ravens. So if you have the Ravens here, only 10 of them have them. They're coming off a bye. They're healthy. You're going to use them now, or week 18 is the only other playable time. So there's a good chance that a few people might push the button if you have
about a third of the field. 10 of the 30 have the Ravens.
Yep.
If you have a little bit of, like Mike noted, if you have a little bit of room for next week as well, if you don't need them next week, it's a great time to use them.
Another play, if you have the Stones, after watching what happened last week, Pittsburgh -6. They play tomorrow night versus the Pats, who literally cannot score. They've now 3 straight weeks, the Pats have held their opponents to 10 points or less.
How'd they do? What's their record in those 3 weeks? Right.
Yeah.
0-3.
Yeah, it's like since 1957 or something to that. I mean, it's just whatever. You could throw those stats out, but I mean, if you can stomach it, there's only, half the pool have them, but they are the third best EV play. And I mean, you're not playing them again because I'm not going to trust them versus Cincy. So you're done. This is it. And you're going to play them. You're going to play them here. If you have the Ravens, you're going to play them here or week 18. And I mean, with all these percentages here with the Packers, Texans, I'm thinking if I'm the guy that has the Dolphins, I think I'm pushing the button. I think I'm taking them in 13 points. I'm taking them versus Tennessee this week.
I think so. It's how often do you get a spot where you've got a massive favorite, like one of the biggest favorite on the board, right? The biggest favorite on the board, and you don't have to worry that you're going to be the chalk.
Yeah.
It's never.
Nobody else can take them.
It's never. This is, we lined ourselves up for this last year with, I think it was Baltimore, if I remember right. And we had 3 people that were able to take him out of maybe 70 left or 30. I don't remember, something like that. And we were thrilled. Now, it worked out. We won, but so did some of the other people. But this is what you're looking for. This is your dream spot, right? You're the huge favorite and everybody else are much smaller favorites. And you lose 1 or 2 of those other chalk games and you win. You make, again, so much headway. You could be down to 5 players, literally.
We weren't thrilled when Lamar Jackson went out in the first series of the game.
Weren't thrilled is one way to put it. That was the week we took him. Somebody can go back and look. I try to block it. Remember, we were at Allegiant watching that game. But if Green Bay, Houston lose, and you have Miami, you're just in such a phenomenal spot. So yeah, for the guy that has Miami, I wouldn't even. I mean, I guess wait in case you hear Tua gets in a car accident or something. But short of that, I mean, you might still take Miami. Short of that, I think you just lock down Miami, and I wouldn't even really think about it unless you literally have nobody else for next week. Like, I'm not here to coach you. I'm not going through your entry. But as long as you have somebody to take next week as well, so you don't have to worry about Miami versus the Jets because that's your other alternative. And to be honest, all else being equal, look, I think the Jets are bad, and Miami just smoked them a couple of weeks ago. But still a division game, blah, blah, blah. I would always rather take, all else being equal, I'd far rather take this spot than the Jets next week. So.
And Zach Wilson's coming back. Who knows?
Whatever. That makes me more likely to take Miami, but whatever.
No, for sure. I think you're looking at the Ravens here if you have them. I think you're looking at Pittsburgh if you can stomach it. And you're also looking at the Saints if you have them. Saints look pretty solid for next week versus the Giants. They could end up being the chalk there. So you might want to just snag them right here and avoid the Packers and Texans in this spot. So
correct. And that's really the way to think about it. It's not so much who you want to take at first. It's, can I avoid the Packers and Texans? Mm-hmm. The answer should be yes, but maybe you can't. Maybe you don't have, I'll go down the rest of the list. Maybe you don't have Miami, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Dallas. No one has Dallas. Dallas, New Orleans, Cleveland, Minnesota. Like, maybe you don't have any of these teams, right?
Yeah.
So and then so be it. But really, your goal should be to avoid certainly the most popular team, probably the second most popular as well. for the math guys out there, yes, I'm aware there's more to it. I'm oversimplifying it. You'd need to look at the very specific EV of the teams, exactly what popularity you expect there to be, et cetera. But to try to give a rough guideline, really try to avoid Green Bay and Houston. This is not about, to be clear, not about us saying they're more or less likely to win their games than anybody else on the board. It's just the probability of them winning compared to the probability of how many people are taking them, not where your value is. Miami,
Absolutely.
tremendous value. Baltimore, tremendous value this week. And you could debate between New Orleans and Pittsburgh, depending on what you're looking at next week. I think that kind of sums that up. And we had a couple of interesting questions before you guys, go, cool, they gave us the picks, I'm logging out. We had somebody, you had one here that's going to kind of dovetail in. You noted somebody reached out on Twitter, I guess you told me, right? That wanted to see if they could get the other 29 people to split 6 million and play for the last 3. I'm going to take the under on that actually happening. Yeah. And that dovetails into what somebody reached out and I think asked me on Twitter, which was, and I might be paraphrasing, I should go dig up his name. Maybe I will before we log off here. I'll try to, multitask for a minute. But he wanted to know, what we did last year. Did we make a deal? What was the nature of the deal? And so far as I can talk about it, how do we go about finding people? And here's, I'll say as much as I can say. You can try to read between lines and or not. We wanted to reach out and find people when we were down to the final 3. It was borderline impossible. It was just ridiculous. So I was literally kind of doing what this guy's doing. I was out there on Twitter going, hey, who out there is, does anybody know who Alex Brown is? Like, who is he? Is the enemy within was the other party. Is he out there? I have no idea who he is. We found Alex fairly quickly. And then you've also got to figure out, is this really him? Like, it's not so easy to just go, okay, I'm him, right? And you're making a deal with somebody who knows what you're doing, right? So you've got to go out there, then you got to figure out if it's really him. For the enemy within, we struggled finding him mightily. Actually, I give a shout out to the guys at Survivor Sweat. It didn't exist yet, but somebody over there actually reached out to other proxies they knew, and they helped us find him as well. Okay, so incredibly hard. This is one of the reasons that Survivor Sweat started. At the end of the day, you've got to find these people. And then when we did, it's okay, so how do we structure a deal? If we can structure one, someone's got to get a lawyer and you got to start drawing up papers. And, it's like Christmas, New Year's, like this is just the world's worst time to be dealing with this stuff. And then you've got to get everybody to agree. And maybe you can, and maybe you can't. And maybe you're splitting everything up, or maybe you're still playing for something, or, whatever. So I'm going to go out there without details of what happened. We did reach all the people, is what I will say. And then negotiating a deal, I'm going to say, is never as easy as you think it'll be. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that. And it's tricky. And then you've got to trust everybody involved in those deals and hope that the documents are good and no one snuck something in there. The thing I like about Survivor Sweat, they're indifferent as to which side of the deal, which of the 2 parties you are, right? Like if I'm a party right now, I'd like to believe I'm going to draw up a very honest contract. But you, Mike, if you don't know me, you might not believe that. You might think my contract's one-sided. When people draft contracts, they often are one-sided, right? If you were the one that showed me the contract, I'd be like, oh God, I hope this is really, fair both ways. At least with Survivor Sweat, I mean, who knows if there's no such thing as a perfect contract, but at least, they're not drawing it up to benefit one party or the other. They're drawing it up. Plus, there's no guarantee they can find your person. There's no guarantee that, you'll find them there. But the fact there's actually a marketplace, you're not just in the giant universe of Twitter going, who's the enemy within? You're actually at a place. So if the other people are interested in making a deal, they hopefully go there as well. And you find each other, which again, and they'll kill me because I didn't say this to them privately first. One thing they need to add over there at Survivor Sweat, they need a board. They need something like this where people can go there saying, hey, I'm looking for the other entrants or something that they can actually try to find them and bring them together. Because the other thing they need to have, which is similar, it's not just a want to sell, it's looking to buy board. And I promised somebody last week, and I almost forgot, as they told me the day after we recorded the pod, if there's somebody out there, believe it or not, it seems like something of an odd request. If there's somebody out there that wants to sell their entry, and I know this seems really strange. And now, of course, at this point now, there's only one of these guys left. Queen Jess 9. Somebody out there was hoping to buy an entry that happens to have the Bills in it. Right. And so, they reached out to me. I said, I'd give a shout out on the pod, but ideally Survivor Sweat can also have a looking to buy thing and, looking to buy an entry that has the bills,
Sure.
what do you got? And you kind of spit it out there.
No,
and also, sorry, I should say the guys over there have some experience in trying to validate the seller is actually the owner of the entry, which is not as easy as it sounds.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the tweet that I saw was at Fight on Spooky. And he's like, hey, he's trying to find the other 29. Let's split 6 million. I'll take 200K off the top and play for the remaining 3. Yeah, they're not going to get 30 people to all agree on equity spot in that. They're just not going to do it. But with that being said, to your point exactly about Survivor Sweat, last year, we would have loved to have had a platform such as this, a place to go to, a home base that wants to discuss all things Circa Survivor. We love this tournament. I mean, I think it's the best football contest in the world, and there's really no home for it. Hence, this Survivor Sweat site started, and it's a way to connect people, connect the community. People can discuss entries. Obviously, they have the credibility to validate people, as you stated. They helped us in our deal last year, so we know how credible they are. And so, yeah, to your point, exactly. Yeah, we need a home base. We need something, all things Circa Survivor, and Survivor Sweat has landed on that space. They'll continue to get better. I'm sure there'll be new features, but as of right now, they're trying to see what the community actually needs and wants and thirsts for. And so they're going to continue to get better and grow. And I wish them all the success in the world. It's awesome.
Of course. And let me answer another question, because it dovetails right back into Survivor Sweat. But I mean, it's not just a bias, it's true. Some people have asked about hedging.
Yeah.
How do I hedge? Is it too soon to hedge? Most of you probably know how to hedge. You have one side of a game, you have one side of the game in a Survivor, you bet the other side, right? There's your hedge. You also could be betting the same side other people have taken. So if they win, at least you win something. It depends, and it's still a little early for this. It depends when those games are being played, right? So which one, and all else being equal, and I think it's early for this anyway, but I'll put it out there. It can be slightly better, but all else really has to be equal. If you're taking the last game of a week. So if your team plays on Monday night, and let's say right now there are 30 entries and you're taking a Monday night team, but all else has to be pretty much equal. I wouldn't take a worse spot because of this. You have to basically be flipping a coin. If you take the Monday night team and you find that all 29 other people went broke before your Monday night game plays, you can actually very safely hedge the other side, because either your hedge is going to win, right? And you might be splitting the pool anyway. Your hedge wins, you're all knocked out. Or you're going to win an advance, you're going to win the whole pool and lose your hedge. Very straightforward, right? And this goes to the whole question of hedging in general. Now, Jeff Benson at Circa, he reached out. I think this is pretty cool. He has said that they've extended their credit hours, so people out there that want to hedge can set up a line of credit. Now, I've not spoken to Jeff about this. I can't think they're specifically tying it to the implied value of your Circa entry, because, the implied value is great, but then if you lose, how do they get paid, right? And they'd have to, and this goes to the problem. My opinion, and I could be wrong, math guys are going to know better than me, it's far easier to hedge. It doesn't necessarily matter how many entries are left. It matters how many weeks are left. Now, you can do it both ways, but think about this for a minute. If there's literally 1 week left, for that example I gave where there's one entry, it's Monday night, you can bet against your own team once, and you're going to win the pool, or you're going to lose your hedge. Win your hedge, you're going to win one or the other, right? If you hedge right now, I'm just going to use very round numbers because you're going to see it exponentially gets higher. If you hedge right now and you want to hedge for, you're willing to put down, your entry's worth, what's it worth? Like 300,000, give or take, something like that.
309,000.
Okay. So let's say, you're not trying to hedge the whole 300. Let's say you just want to make, you're willing to bet the opposite side of your game. So if you get knocked out, you win your hedge, and presumably you're betting a favorite. So let's say you're betting 10,000. And if you win 20,000. If you lose 10,000. Okay. Sounds great. Now you advance, and maybe only 20 teams advance. So your implied value goes up. So next week you decide to hedge again. Well, now you got to bet, 20,000 because you got to get back your first 10. And so that's going to keep going up. If you have 2 weeks to go, maybe you only need 30,000 to totally hedge. When you could have 6 or 7 weeks, It could be, if you want to think about it more simply, it's not going to quite be a double because if they're not even money, you're going to be. But if it was, 10,000, then 20,000, then 40, then 80, I mean, you could need a few 100,000. And then you have to hope that if you get to the end and your last hedge bet, by the way, it's only going to net you the 10,000 you were trying to make day one. Your last hedge bet could be 600,000 or 700,000, and you got to hope Circa takes it.
Yeah, no, with 30 left, we're in no man's land at this point. We're not ready to start hedging these type of numbers.
And that's my point.
Exactly.
But what you could do is, again, if you're in a spot where, and the time you want to set it up, and I've said this to a few people, I'm going to say it again, get something set up at Circa, get some money there, get a credit line, do something, have it on deposit. The most likely time one of these things is going to happen, it's going to be Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Because you have very few games. There are very few opportunities for people to have something. If you happen to have the last game of the day, it's not implausible, because it's not implausible, it happened last year, that you could be in a spot where everybody else is knocked out and you're getting ready to go, or the corollary, which is similar, you've advanced. This literally happened last year on Christmas. One guy advanced, or Christmas Eve, one guy advanced. I think it was the Vikings Giants, and they had the field goal, made it by like a foot going over the goalpost. He advanced the end of regulation. Everybody else went out. I think 14 came in, except the last 3 of us. And we were all playing. We all had the Raiders and Steelers. We had the Steelers versus the Raiders on Sunday night. And had the Raiders won, that guy wins the whole pool, right? So he can go out there and actually bet the Steelers.
Yeah.
Fairly safely. Because if the Steelers win, he wins that bet. He's still alive, he wins the bet. If the Steelers lose, he wins the whole $6 million by himself. He didn't, as we understand it. He said he didn't believe it hedging. He also said, I think, and I hate to misquote, he didn't have the money at Circa to hedge anyway, and he wouldn't even if he did. He didn't believe in hedging. To me, that's a phenomenal time to hedge. How much you want to hedge, different question. But if you have no money there, you have no option.
Yeah, and to wrap up exactly what you said, just be prepared. Just be prepared, because you'll never know. And sometimes when you know, it's too late, and specifically around the holidays. So if you find yourself in this position, and I hope you do, just be prepared, have something set up if that is something that you're willing to act upon, for sure.
And for perspective, that Christmas with, was it 10 that went out, 4 went Christmas Eve, 4 that went to the next day. Those 10 went out, I want to say 4 games. It wasn't one game. So don't think, okay, well, it's not likely to happen. Of course, it's not likely to happen. But you could be in a spot this week where if you avoid the chalk, you could look up, and before you do anything, although granted you got Green Bay on Monday night, right? But you could be in a spot where you've advanced, nobody else has advanced, and the only game left is that Green Bay Giants game with 20% of the field.
Sure.
And if they were half the field, and if Green Bay wins, you can safely bet Green Bay. Put it that way at that point. If literally you're the only one, if Green Bay wins, you win your hedge. If Green Bay loses, you win the whole pool. Now, if you were on the chalk with Houston, it's never going to work, because sure, you'll advance with Houston with 30% of the field. So like, you can't really hedge anything on Monday. There are just too many players left, right? And so that's another reason you want to avoid the chalk. But I hope I gave some answers to you about hedging. I'm not going to go into there's lots of data out there, and it's far more detailed as to how much you should hedge, how many dollars you want to spread, what price you're looking for. Oh, and one thing I don't want to forget, and they bring it up at the end of the year. I think they've already started taking them. Don't forget, in Survivor, ties lose. Circa, to the best of my knowledge, is the only book that does this. Maybe somebody else has, where they will also let you bet the tie.
Yeah.
And they're going to give you a big price. It could be 30 to 1, 40 to 1, whatever. But you don't want to be in a spot where you think you're hedging. Suddenly the game ends in a tie. You lose your Survivor entry and you lose your hedge.
Yes.
You want to make sure you can win at least one or the other, right? So, excuse me, keep that in mind.
Yes,
and
definitely an extra layer to that hedging. So just obviously keep that in mind.
But it is way too early unless you find yourself in a spot where you're the only one that's already advanced and there's somebody else playing after you for the rest of the pool.
Yep.
Or everybody else is already out and you're the last one to play. But right now, it's not that you can't hedge, and people with big bankrolls could hedge. But keep in mind, your hedge now, you have to assume this thing is going to go to the end of the year. Don't assume that it's not going to go to the end of the year, which means your hedge now, you're going to have to keep going every week, and it's not the same amount of money. It's going to be exponentially higher before you're done. And you're also very unlikely, if you have a 2-to-1 favorite now or 2.5-to-1 favorite now, probability is by week 15, 16, 17, 18, you're going to be having, you're going to be betting a favorite that's like minus 130, minus 140, because you're not going to have those teams remaining, which means you're not going to get 2-1 in your hedge. In order to make 100,000, you might have to bet 90. Like you're going to get very small premiums to get your money back. So I personally would not hedge now, but I would definitely prepare to hedge now.
This is all great stuff. I'm so happy that you discussed it, and it literally brings into emotions of last year of what we were doing and how we were prepared and what we were getting ready.
Yeah, stuff's not easy.
No, it is not easy. A lot of people think it's really easy to win this contest. There's a lot of things that you got to do to make sure that you're going to secure your portion of the pie there. So this is all great information. If some people have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. Like I said, this is fresh in our mind. We went through this every permutation we went through, and we had ourselves in line there to make sure that we were walking away with a piece of this for sure. So good stuff, Russ. That was awesome. Back to Survivor Sweat. There's 4 entries selling a percentage between 25 and 60K. And there's 1 entry that is willing to give up 95% of it for 130K. I think you found your cross with the implied entry of 308,900.
Yep. I think I said when it hit the 6 figures, you're gonna see it.
That you definitely found your week. You found your cross. So here it is.
I think I got to go look at that entry.
They have Philly available. And I've also run some of the numbers and permutations on there. They have some teams and some spots and some paths to get through. Need to dig down a little bit deeper, but yep, if one of you are out there and you're interested in that, there is your value, if you call it that. All right.
There's definitely value. You just have to have the stomach to realize, depending on exactly the teams, all else being equal, and I haven't, looked at the teams, all else being equal, 29 out of 30 times, you still lose, right? So, well, sort of. I mean, you could chop lots of times. But when you chop, you've made money, right? Yep. You paid 130. The entry is worth, if you chop with every single person that's still left, it's worth 300,000. So,
I think you're 100% right. Yep. So that is it. If you want to reach out to us again, Survivor Sweat X handle. A few people have reached out to us. Thanks. If you are a former champ and you're still in, I'm not sure if there's anybody out there that's a former champ. Hit us up. Discussion board over at survivorsweat.com. And if you have a question for us in the future pod, we're more than happy to try to answer that for you.
Or if you made some creative pick, whether you're the guy that laid the wood with 10 teams, or you're somebody that literally last week took the Jets or the Saints and you want to talk about why and defend yourself or just explain yourself, hit us up. If you sound, reasonably coherent and rational, maybe we'll have you on.
Yep. Rational. He took the Jets.
I said, that's why I said if. It wasn't a foregone conclusion.
Give the guy
a chance to defend himself.
We discussed. Maybe it was a misclick. Who knows?
Could be.
Who knows?
Could be.
Make sure that you click those buttons. Make sure that you don't miss the entry time. Let's get those picks in. Let's push and confirm. And let's survive.
Let's do it.
For week 14. Look ahead. See you next week.
See ya.
Hope you survive.
Later.
Looking for Survivor strategy articles? Did you lose your last entry on a Survivor contest and wish you could rebuy? Check out our marketplace and you may find what you need. Head over to survivorsweat.com for all things Survivor. And we'll see you next week for the next Survivor Sweat podcast.